good afternoon, or good morning if you're further west of me, or good evening if you're further east of me. My name is Dale Rodriguez, and this is Flabonga Monthrothacube. And with me today, I've got co-host
Tony Stevenson, co-host,
and our wonderful guest,
Mark Lee.
Mark. Thank you for joining us.
Absolute pleasure. Delighted to be here. Just finished my own podcast, so nice to be a guest on somebody else's.
Well, first of all, let's do some cross promo. What's your podcast?
My podcast, which I co-host with Philippa Haynes, is the Accountant's Success Secrets podcast, where we highlight and profile an accountant who's been running their own practice for a good few years. We get them to share the highs, the lows, the things they've learned, lessons they've learned, and mistakes they've made that they're willing to share for the benefit of other practitioners looking to build their own practices.
I think that is a secret.
Yeah, and we've done, I think it was our 57th episode today, something like that. We're well into the 50s now.
Congrats.
So not as many as you.
I've actually lost count.
We talk about this statistic quite frequently, don't we, Dale, about how it's something like 1% of podcasters only make it to 3 episodes, and then 1% of those podcasts, or 10% of those podcasters only make it to 20. So if you've done more than 20 podcasts, you're already in the top 1% of podcasters of all time because you've done more than 20 episodes, right? So yeah, it's they call it pod fade, I think, is the in name for it when people start a pod and then it just fades away.
I love it. We were thrilled when we found out we were on a listing of the top 25 accountancy podcasts in the UK, and that tends to suggest there probably are only about 25 that have kept going. But I think
20 of them are Phil Hobden as well. If you're listening, no shade if you're listening.
That number 5, but it's maybe even 4. It's lovely. It's very nice.
I'm going to quit on that. Hold on. Yeah. How do you spell his last name? Is it Hogbdon? No, that's not right.
Hobden. Yeah.
So I'm trying something new at the moment. That's why I'm distracted. I apologise.
Well, I tend to think deadness and quietness in podcasts is probably not the best approach.
Sometimes I like it though. Sometimes I deliberately do it to make an uncomfortable silence.
It's true. He does. That's why he brought me in, to fill the uncomfortable silences where there was time to spare.
Okay, let's take it back a step. What I've done, I forget this because the people I speak to, like Mark, we know each other a little bit. I forget to ask them to introduce themselves in more detail. So can you, for the people who don't know you, don't work in the accounting space, can you put down your name, a bit of background about your career and what you do now?
Okay, well, my name's Mark Lee. Online everywhere, I'm Bookmark Lee. Even my business card is a bookmark. Ever find me anywhere, ask for Bookmark. Very welcome. And I started life, as all accountants do, I started life as a children's party entertainer. I did that for 25 years, which overlapped with the start of my accountancy career. And the accountancy career started because I realised that I wasn't going to make a living as a magician and children's party entertainer, and my parents were also none too pleased with these, with my limited ambition there. And so I went off to train and qualify as an accountant, quickly realised I hated auditing, moved to tax. And I look back and I think that because of the communication skills I developed as an entertainer and magician, I was able to progress perhaps better than some of my colleagues, and I certainly was perceived as having better communication skills and able to explain complex concepts to clients and colleagues in a way that perhaps others didn't. So I moved into tax training. I joined a top 20 firm of accountants, then BDO headhunted me. So I was a partner in a couple of large firms. A few years later, BDO culled partners in London. It was long enough ago that I could talk about it. And I then ran a couple of tax consultancies until I experienced redundancy effectively for the second time. And that was 19 years ago. Ever since, I've been paddling my own canoe as a speaker, mentor, unpaid author, because I blog an enormous amount. I blog every week on my podcast, on my own website. Practical tips, business development ideas for accountants in practice. I also write 3 to 5 times a week on LinkedIn with ideas and advice largely for accountants in practice. and I'm mentoring sole practitioner accountants, speaking on stage at events for accountants in all sizes, which I love doing, but I'm reaching that stage in my career where, unless they want Mark Lee, I tend not to be top of the list of speakers because I'm not sufficiently diverse. And I understand and I accept that. Indeed, I was one of the first. I've spoken at every Accountex in London since it started. And some years ago, I was encouraging them to introduce more diverse speakers, diverse and from an inclusion perspective in all perspectives. And I'm thrilled that I no longer have to advocate it because it now happens automatically, which is brilliant. Not just for Accountex, generally. It's wonderful.
One of the things I like about you, Mark, is despite all your accolades, you're a very humble guy. So I'm going to ask you a very tricky question on purpose, because you're a humble guy, you won't like the question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Of all the awards and notoriety you receive, what's the most honourable or the one you appreciate the most, the accolades you receive?
Second after being on our podcast, right?
Yeah, second after being invited on FM.
Notoriety is probably a fair observation. The thing I was most excited, I've only ever won one award, and that was outstanding contribution at Accountex last year, which was a real thrill and delight at the end of my keynote talk. The thing professionally, it was brilliant qualifying as a chartered accountant long time ago. Some years later, I was running a tax consultancy, and I wasn't a chartered tax advisor at the time. I'd considered studying for the exams. In fact, I'd started studying them when I was at what was then Schross, now Deloitte. And I remember sitting at home one Saturday morning going, why am I doing this? And because I realized that if I stayed at the firm, I didn't need another tax qualification. I could progress by reference to how good I was in practice. If I left, the fact that I trained in tax at Schross, Deloitte, big four firms, we say, would have been sufficient. So I stopped doing the CTA exams. Looking back, within a couple of years, I was encouraging everybody in tax to do those exams that I worked with, but I never had. And then I'm managing director of a tax consultancy, a bit embarrassing, but I was also chair of the tax faculty at the ICAEW, which I loved. That was a huge thrill. Got me into 11 Downing Street. Before the age of iPhones, so there's no photographic evidence of that.
Honestly, I was there. Look what I stole. Yeah.
But I was invited by the CIOT to submit a body of work in lieu of writing a thesis. So quite a long time ago now, I submitted a whole load of stuff I'd written about incorporation, moving from being a sole trader or a partnership to a company. I'd written a tax digest. I'd written articles, chapters in books and partnership type stuff. And the idea that was going to get me my CTA qualification, or my fellowship, in fact. And I didn't hear anything back. And I was really upset. And I remember going to an event at the CIOT. I think it was the launch of the Advanced Diploma in Tax. And I said to somebody I knew there, look, I've submitted this body of work and nobody's come back to me. I appreciate who is it who's pulled the short straw that needs to tell me it's not good enough and that I'm not going to get my fellowship, because I'll just let them know I'd rather hear that than carry on waiting. And I remember the lady said, no, she said, Mark, she said, they haven't even looked at it yet because we only consider them once a year. And your entry arrived just after last year's.
But no one bothered to tell you that.
for the layman, I need to ask a question. What is a fellowship?
Oh, sorry, that's just so. With the ICAEW, Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales, you become ACA, a chartered accountant, and then after 10 years, you become a fellow chartered accountant. Just if you apply for it within the ICAEW, it's automatic after 10 years. An FCA. F standing for fellow rather than any other word you might think of.
Essentially, you've been doing it a while, and that F means you know what you're talking about.
Yes.
Tony, you got an F, right? You're an F in front of your.
I've got an F, yes.
You're also a tax guy as well, right?
Yeah, I was a tax guy.
I always thought your F was for free agent.
Yeah, it should be. It should be. Yeah. Nowhere near the level of esteem that Mark was. I was, not great at it, if I'm honest.
F stands for Fellow of the Chartered Institute of Taxation. So again, it implies a sort of a degree of credibility, I suppose, over and above. I would never say just being a chartered tax advisor, because that's a huge in itself. Anyway, sure enough, 6 months later, I got my letter confirmed, which I still have, confirming that my body of work was sufficient. I was invited to an admissions ceremony at Guildhall in London. And at the time I'd qualified as a chartered accountant many years before, they didn't have big admissions ceremonies. And I'm a non-graduate, so I'd never had anything like this before. So I remember going to Guildhall one Friday afternoon for this ceremony and then being called up on stage, being presented my certificate by the then president of the CIOT, Peter Kempster, who I knew through my work on the tax faculty. I knew a lot of these people. And that was that felt like a huge achievement for this non-public school educated, non-graduate who'd made his way despite not having the academic qualifications, and I'd struggled with all my accountancy exams as well, to be given this award at Guildhall, my fellowship of the CTA. That was absolutely my proudest moment professionally.
So you're non-publicly educated, non-exam educated, children's entertainer. That's what I thought you were going to say at the end. Yeah, amazing.
Mark, do you drink coffee?
Yeah.
Tony, over to you.
Is it coffee? So that's an early coffee question. Yeah, so we asked this question to most of our guests, although I actually forgot to ask it to James last week. One of our irreverent tangents into getting to know our guests a bit better. So the coffee question is, if we can sort of agree on like kind of, artisan, local independent sellers being, like the cream of the crop, but like, let's just imagine you've been dropped in a city where there are none of those and it's just wall-to-wall chain generica of coffee. Which is the coffee that you would gravitate towards in terms of the large brands, and which is the one that you would avoid? Or what we've had answers before is just, I wouldn't drink it.
Well, I have a cup of coffee here with me now. I do have a local place that I go to, Tag in Eastcote. They do brilliant branding as well as wonderful coffee. It's my Sunday morning little treat. But in terms of the mainstays, I generally prefer Cafe Nero to Costa, and I can't remember the last time I was in a Starbucks. Other chains, I've no doubt, are available.
Interesting.
Good. Don't worry, we're not the BBC. You can trash whoever you want. There's a question from a viewer, Marcus Batson. Thank you, Marcus. He's been like a long-time supporter of the show. His question is to Mark. Who's Mark's favourite guest on ASS?
On the Accountant Success Secrets podcast, my favourite guest is always going to be the first one, which was David Frederick, who runs his own practice in southwest London, and is also a past president of the AAT. And David trusted me to come on as the very first guest on the podcast. He's always been a great advocate for me. He was a member of my inner circle when I used to run a round table in London. And he tells this wonderful story because I phoned him up, and he said, his secretary said, Mark Lee's on the phone for you. And he said, who? She said, Mark Lee. And this is going to be like 10 years ago. I said, well, why is Mark Lee phoning me? And he picked up the phone, very, very suspicious. And I invited him to come to the inner circle, which was a round table I was running in London. He came and he expected there to be accountants from big firms there, and he was so suspicious. And he still tells the story that he realised that I was much lovelier in real life. And it wasn't real salesy. He fitted right in, and he was a member of the Inner Circle for all the years I ran it, stopped that just before COVID. And he's been a great member and advocate of the Soul Practice Club, which is the round table I run online, a monthly webinar group for soul practitioners. And he's been an active member of that for 3.5 years now, however long we've been running it. And I just admire him deeply. So because he was the first, I'm not excluding anybody else. We've had some wonderful guests. And when you asked the question, I thought, should I just go the cheats way out and say the most recent guest is always my favorite?
No, that would be a filthy, dirty lie, and I'd call you out on it straight away.
Yeah, so I can honestly say that having David on
Marcus Batson, David's great. And also we've got Mark Harrison in the comments. He's our friend from, I want to say like Aberdeen way. Mark, you need to get a set of headphones so you can match these other dudes. That's from Mark Harrison.
If I was worried about matching dudes, then I'd get a set of headphones.
No, man, you do you.
And the thing is, during the pandemic, I did buy myself a proper microphone.
Hold on to zoom out.
I got one of those.
Nice.
Yeah, a biggie. And everything's just.
It's not that big.
And the lights all just fallen down. But I've never. I tried using it for a while, but found that apparently it didn't make enough difference to warrant the hassle. So I use a MacBook, so whenever I plugged it in, the sound went somewhere else. And
That's your fault for using a Mac, Mark. That's your fault for using a Mac. I know, Tony, you're a Mac guy, aren't you? You're a Mac guy?
Yes, yeah.
It
took me a very long time to get used to the fact that there's only a backspace button and there's not a delete button on a Mac like there is on a Windows PC. But once I'd got used to that, like even now, like if I get put in front of a Windows PC, it feels like if you've ever brushed your teeth with warm water, like how jarring that experience is. It's similar. I just can't. Yeah, no, just. I can't deal with it.
I switched to Macs sometime after I left full-time employment. My kids encouraged me, and I've almost never looked back.
All right. I need to ask you another silly question, Mark. Again, the premise is, do you eat meat? I think you do.
No, I don't. I stopped eating meat. No, I stopped eating meat over 35 years ago. My wife encouraged me to stop eating meat, and I know it was that long ago because my son is in his mid-30s, struggling to remember, 37, I think. And for the first few years, people used to say, "Where'd you get your protein from? Then you're going to fade away." Look at me, guys. I haven't eaten meat for over 35 years. I have not faded away.
Okay, let me adapt the question for you then. Let me zoom in a little bit. There we go.
Yeah.
Mark Lee, if you could eat one vegetable for the rest of your life, forsaking all others, what vegetable are you choosing?
Mushrooms.
You'd eat mushrooms, yeah?
Yeah, that vegetable. That's a vegetable, isn't it?
We'll count it as a vegetable. I think we use it as a vegetable. You could argue mycelia are different, but we use it like a vegetable. So yeah, so mushrooms are your go-to.
It's definitely not meat. Put it that way.
Exactly.
It's definitely no. Or sugar snap peas.
Wait, are you going sugar snap peas or are you going mushrooms? If you have the sugar snap peas, you can never have mushrooms again.
Oh, in that case, it's got to be mushrooms because you cook them so many different ways.
Okay.
I really like the way you pivoted there in such an inclusive way, Dale, to include non-meat eaters into that question. Has that ever happened before? Have you ever had the answer no?
Possibly, but maybe not on the podcast.
Yeah. One thing I would like to just ask, because Dale, you might have done this before, but not since I've been on the show, is we haven't seemed to have an ever gradually expanding variety of people in the comments. If you are listening, put some comments on the thread because it helps us to know who is listening to our show because we've got no idea. So thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Marcus. We've thrown some bait out to Phil Hobden, but he hasn't bitten just yet. But yeah, if you're listening, stick some comments in because it helps us to know who's listening. I have a question for Mark, if that's okay, which is a slight segue. So you work with sole practitioners, but your background is in larger firms. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So what prompted that decision to work with the sole practitioners rather than kind of bigger firms or, consulting with large firms or, I'm fascinated when people take this step towards working on their own, working for themselves, or as you really nicely put it, paddling your own canoe. What prompted that and what did you get out of that?
When I went freelance, so I'd experienced redundancy for the second time, and I sat back, and my friends in the profession and outside the profession said things like, "Mark, you're so well known, you're so highly regarded, you can do coaching, consulting, they'll be beating a path to your door." And they didn't. And I went out, as you had to do, hustling in order to get business. And I remember there was a great firm where the managing partner who'd seen me speak or something, I had a chat with him, and he then booked me to coach or mentor 3 individual members of his firm. One was a guy who desperately wanted to become a partner but didn't have he was missing some skills. Second was a lady who had ambitions but didn't really fit in, and could I help her? And the third was a guy who joined on a merger who wasn't gelling with the other partners. And I met all 3 of them, worked with all 3 of them. The first one did subsequently become a partner. The second one left within 6 months, and I was devastated. The managing partner got in touch and said, "That's brilliant. That's exactly what we hoped would happen." And the third one fitted in and finished his time with the firm. So a success. But in those conversations, I had remembered the struggles and frustrations I'd had when I was in practice. And the same thing happened whenever firms booked me to speak at their away days or their conferences, which I still loved doing, but I didn't like feeling I was part of the firm or working with people who were struggling with the political issues in partnerships. And I was being approached more and more by individuals who wanted to progress their careers. And I realized the other big factor, to answer your question, Tony, is that whenever a partner in a larger firm wanted to engage me to work with a team or to come in and even to speak or to work with individuals, or an individual in a firm wanted me to work with them and for the firm to pay for it, which I'm remembering now is one of the offerings I first had for a while. The decision-making process in firms with multiple partners, which
preach, brother, preach.
So I thought, you know what? I'm working by myself. There is enough business out there for me to work with people who are able to make decisions for themselves and don't need somebody else to authorize it.
I would like to go back a step. You mentioned about your early days in starting, and you mentioned the word hustle, a word that is used a lot today in modern culture. Quite a broad question I'm going to ask you. How did you hustle? What did hustling look like? And how would you recommend people hustle nowadays? So 3 questions in one.
I think there's a big difference now from 19 years ago. 19 years ago, I made the classic mistake of listening to my friends and going, "Hey, I'll tell people I'm out here, I'll email people, and they will approach me. They will." And hey, I wasn't a salesperson. I knew nothing. I knew very little about it. The only thing I knew about sales, you'll see how I segue all of these to different stories. The only thing I knew about sales is vaguely relevant in the context of the start of MTD, which does not stand for Mark's Terrible Decisions, of which there have been many.
Making tax deplorable.
Yes. You might say that. I couldn't possibly comment. But in the mid-90s, we were coming up to the then big change in the personal tax system in the UK, which was the introduction of the self-assessment system and the abolition of the prior year basis of taxation in favour of what we currently have, the current year basis of taxation, CYB. And I was, with a couple of colleagues, was writing the first guide to be published about that new tax system. And I needed loads of examples for it. and ended up using Excel to create those examples, but then realized that every accountant would need to do this for their clients, but wouldn't know the rules. So I was authorized to create, and I outsourced the creation of the first tax planning software for accountants. It was called CyberTax, CYB, CyberTax. And because I was behind it, I had to learn marketing and sales. And I still apply a lot of what I learned all that time ago in the marketing and sales I do now.
So I'm sorry to interrupt you because I've got so many questions.
I can see the questions so many. Just trying to burst out of their face.
I wish we had more time on these things, but okay. So the next one I want to ask is to kind of steer the conversation. So you said you kind of you learnt about marketing and sales. What gaps do accountants stereotypically have when it comes to marketing and sales?
Well, it's not part of the training, I think, for any of the professional qualifications. And I love contributing in Facebook groups. And the number of people who say, I've got a number of years experience in practice, I'm going to go start my own practice now. What do I need to know? And the first thing you need to know is being a good accountant does not equip you to run a business or run a practice as an accountant. And you have to develop key communication skills, pitching skills, pricing skills, marketing and promotion skills. And I was lucky because CyberTax helped me there. But also, again, looking back, I'd been hustling, use the current vernacular, selling and promoting myself from the days back as a teenager when I was a children's party entertainer. And I'd be talking to the parents of children at one party, endeavouring to ensure they booked me for their kids' party. And I look back, I've written about this on my blog, I think, and elsewhere. I look back and realise that I've been applying some of those skills for many, many years since.
Thank you for answering my question. I'm going to jump in the comments very quickly. In fact, Tony, would you mind reading this particular comment?
Mark Howson, why did the mushroom get hired as an accountant? Because he was a fun guy to accountant.
I'm also going to jump back to Catherine Freeman because I'm actually going to honour her. I'm going to call this the Catherine Freeman question because of how she answered it, right? When Catherine was on this show, I asked her, if there was one fictional character from a TV show or a film that you could get away with punching in the face, who would it be? Her answer was legendary. But Mark, same question to you. If there's a fictional character you could get away with just punching in the face, I know you're not an aggressive guy, maybe a slap, who would it be? I can go first if you like.
Oh, please do, because my mind has gone absolutely nowhere.
Okay, so as a self-professed geek, I love Star Trek. My dad got me watching it. I watched the original ones. I watched pretty much every single episode. There's a series of Star Trek called Voyager, and in it there's a character called Neelix. And just to be clear, his character, especially in the first two series, he's a terrible character. And if I could punch him in the face with no repercussions, I would do it.
I can understand that. I have to say that I would just turn it off. I can't imagine punching anybody in the face. I can't even imagine.
That's like the passive equivalent of punching them in the face, right? Whatever your version of that is, and turning them off the telly, I think is just as damning, right? Attention is currency these days, right? That's probably worse, because if you punch them in the face, they'd probably get more attention because it'd be in the news, there'd be headlines about it. So actually what you're really doing is just not giving them any oxygen, right? It's like when you see a ridiculous post on LinkedIn, if you jump in the comments, you're just making it worse. You're just giving them more airtime, right?
Catherine, to respond to her comment, she says the shame. Catherine, no shame. We listen, but we don't judge.
No.
And just going back to your question about how accountants can develop the necessary sales skills, study, read, listen to experts. There's podcasts that can help you develop it, but it's practice, and it's not something you'll get right first time. On the last episode of my podcast, Michael Austin of Blue Dot Consulting recommended the film Maverick, because in the film Maverick, Mel Gibson, playing the lead character, sits down at a poker table and says, please let me play with you. I'm going to lose for the first hour before I start winning. And you go, what the hell are you talking about, Michael? Why are you sharing this? And he said, that's what it's like with pricing your services as an accountant. You're going to get it wrong initially. Recognize that, accept it, learn from that, and make sure you then start applying what you've learned. And I thought that was really, really good advice. And yeah, when I'm mentoring sole practitioners and those who join the Sole Practice Club, yes, we can shortcut the process to a degree, but you're only going to learn from experience.
Thank you for that explanation. That was what I'm enjoying most about this conversation is you are weaving words of wisdom, you're giving practical examples, and you're humoring my daft questions. So thank you very much for that. I really appreciate it. LinkedIn user who's anonymous says hi. I'm guessing that's James Sunday because for some reason when he comments it's anonymous. Kirsty St. John has joined us. Kirsty, she's like a newer fan to the show. She's started tuning in almost every week. Thank you, Kirsty, for joining us. You're great. Random LinkedIn user, how are you?
It's got to be James.
You
know it's James, and I know why I know it's James is because we've started talking about sales. So James, somewhere in the back of his brain, will have gone, "There's a conversation about sales going on, so I need to be in the middle of it." And that's just James, right? He is sales.
He's one of the best salespeople I've ever met. So
yeah, he's quite incredible. Good. Yeah, he's quite incredible. I think I just want to plug his masterclass is now sold out at LinkedIn. Accountex. I saw him post about that earlier, which is quite cool. We had James on last week for the third time. On the show, and he's one of my favorites. He's fab, but sales is his strong point. So yeah, I bet it's him.
We're going to jump back to Catherine Frimond's comment, by the way, because I think it's a good segue. Catherine Frimond, is that where the wand comes in? I assume that's a question to Mark because I don't have a wand. Tony doesn't have a wand, so
if Mark does that, you can see a wand. Yeah.
I always have a magic wand behind me because I'm often asked if I can do things for accountants, and it's as if they want me to be able to wave a magic wand, which I can only do literally, not figuratively. I thought if we have a moment, it might be helpful, something I never do online, a quick magic trick for you, trying to weave things together. I've never done this on a webinar before or any of my training courses. I've got 3 little ropes here because there's 3 of us. And yellow, I think, is probably suitable for free agent. Green will have for Preston Reed, and red would be for bookmark Lee. There we go. We'll tie them all together, and so we'll have three loops. And of course, this being a podcast, it will loop. If you get to the end, you can come back to the beginning again because it's LinkedIn Live, not a podcast. And I think it's probably appropriate to say that this has been a fun half hour we've spent together. In fact, probably if we take free agent Preston Reeves and bookmark Lee all together, we've ended up creating one lovely continuous loop. There you go.
I love magic. I love
magic. More magic about that was my next question was going to be. So when it comes to like magic tricks, Mark, are you ready to go, or should we have primed you for this before the feed? But I'd like to just make it very clear we didn't ask Mark. Well, Dale might have done, but I wasn't involved in any pre-conversations about what that piece of absolute witchcraft that Mark just did live on. Oh, that's brilliant.
I was terrified you might ask me, and that I ought to think about something beforehand. So I had a quick think about that. Normally, I only do magic on stage in my talks, and anybody who's seen me at Accountex or elsewhere will know there's always 2 or 3 tricks in there. But it's about delivering the value to the audience. The magic is there to add some entertainment and make it memorable, rather than when I was younger, I used it to show off, but I tend not to do that anymore.
I love magic, honestly. The last time I saw you do magic, we were at the ICB Awards, and you did an amazing sleight of hand trick. And here's the thing, I know how you did it, but the fact you did it with such skill, I still enjoyed it. And the second thing I like about magic, my godson, he's learning magic. It's just a great confidence booster. Like someone who's maybe introverted, like just knowing you can do a skill really, really well. I've seen it help him significantly. It's such a great thing. Even if I know how the trick's been done, he's 10, I think it's 10. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think when he's 12, he can join the Young Magicians Club at the Magic Circle. I think it might be 10, but I think it's 12. Just search for it online. If he's into magic, he'll like that. And I got into magic early because I couldn't sing. I couldn't play a musical instrument. I couldn't tell jokes. I didn't play football or sport, but I wanted something that would enable me to attract, I'm going to say women. I obviously mean girls, because I was a young guy at the time. And doing magic tricks at school and college and all the rest of it was my alternative to telling jokes. And in answer to the question, did it help me get women? No.
Do you know how I know it didn't help you get women? So my personal story, I learned to play guitar to get girls, thinking it'll make me less of a geek. I'm just a geek who plays guitar. Yeah. It
Love it.
Then you were like, I know what I'll do. I'll go to the gym and lift some really heavy stuff, and that'll help. Still, just a really strong guy here.
I love it. We're typical blokes in that regard. We just did things to impress women, and still the same characters as before. My
wife still says that she knew I was good husband material and that I'd be a good father because I was so good with the children at the parties. Because I was working as an accountant during the week, or studying, both. And then at the weekends I was entertaining at children's parties, so she would come with me to the parties very early on in our relationship, and she could see I was good with them, so she thought I'd be a good father, and thank goodness I have been. And now I've got grandchildren, which is wonderful.
So you're effectively being interviewed for the role of father and parent whilst at work, but without being told about it. That's
I've never thought of it that way, Tony.
Your wife is very clever.
She is, yeah.
She is.
That's astonishing.
How many grandkids do you have, by the way?
I've got 3. I've got 2 girls, 6 and a 4, and my grandson is just over a year, 13 months.
Which one's your favourite?
Nope.
But you had a favourite podcast guest, so it's a legit question, right?
Oh, then make it easier for you. Of your kids, which one's your favourite?
So easy.
Same.
Okay, I got 2. My son's got the 2 girls, and my daughter has got the little boy. I love them all. I
asked Alex von Schermaster that question a couple of weeks ago, and he also declined to answer. So I answered on his behalf to his son, who might have watched it on YouTube. I don't think his son would have liked my answer. If I'm honest. Would you like to hear what the answer was?
It's not you. Try harder.
It pretty much was that. Alex explained that he's got 2 children. He's got an older child, 22, and his son is 15. I listened to the camera and said, "Look, man, you 15-year-old are a liability to your father. Your sister has left house. He's happy with that. You are the least favorite right now because you cost him time and money." Said it straight to the camera. Hopefully he watched it. He probably didn't, but
both of mine are married, living in their own homes, and they're off the books, as they say.
Job done. There you go.
My daughter is 2, and we're working on nicknames at the moment. So the other day she said to me, "Daddy, I love you. Daddy, you're lovely. You're a dragon." And I was like,
yeah.
Oh, yeah, we can work with this. I was like, so my mind immediately went to Step Brothers, and if you've seen the film Step Brothers, where they're stood on the lawn at the beginning, where they're being introduced to each other. If you've not seen it, so it's a Will Ferrell film, and it's 2. I can't remember the name of the actors, but they come together and they've both got a 39 and a 40-year-old son that still lives at home, and then they move in together, and then John C. Reilly and Will Ferrell are the 2 sons, and they start kind of posturing off against each other, and they're on the front lawn, and he says to him, "You have to call me Dragon," and then the other guy goes, and then the other one says, "You have to call me Nighthawk." So we're working on that as our nicknames at the moment, but at the moment I am Dragon, I am Nighthawk, and my daughter is my daughter.
Daddy Dragon. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. I took that. Definitely take that. But she's getting it. I think. But yeah,
that's lovely. Great age. As I say to everybody, they get the relationship you have with your kids just gets better and better until they become teenagers. Then.
Mark, you've humoured Tony and I for a fair amount of time. Do you have any questions for us?
My question: how did you 2 come together to be running this podcast together?
That's a good question.
When did we first meet, Tony? When is it, like at Accountex or some kind of event?
Nope, it was it depends on your classes meet. So like, I remember many years ago, you were very kind. I had a burgeoning idea at the time, which I never brought to fruition, which was a community idea around like similar-ish, I guess, to what you do, Mark, around like bringing people within our world together. And the idea was to kind of bring together like technology people and accountancy people in probably a Slack group. And Dale and I had sensed a similar vibe, I think, through our LinkedIn activity, and we'd had a few messages back and forth, and I asked him if he would kindly spare me 20 minutes to just so I could run this idea past him. And I remember you were sat on a pub bench outside in the sun of a lunchtime, and we had a 20-minute chat about this said community idea. And yeah, like I think the first time we met in real life was at Accountex. So yeah. But Dale's been running the pod for a while. We were just having a conversation about it. I've always kind of wanted to have a podcast, and we just kind of came to the conclusion that it would be a useful or a good idea to see whether having a co-host was a good thing. So I'm guessing this must be about my probation time is up, mate, because we started this in February, didn't we? And it was
you have to be paid to have probation. Like, you're not being paid at all for this.
No, this is true. That is very true. That is very true. Yeah, but you can still do a lot of damage without getting paid, right? So yeah, so that's kind of how we came together. Dale had been running it for I give Dale all the credit for building the platform and the name of the brand into everything what it was, and I've just sloped in and and tried to add a bit to it. So,
well, I can understand the appeal from Dale's perspective. I won't say specifically you, Tony, but I know when Philippa invited me to co-host a podcast with her, the idea of doing it together rather than alone. It does make it easier in so many respects. I get that, and the community side that you're talking about with tech companies and bringing them together with Accountex. I run a short webinar course for people who are looking to sell to accountants or through accountants, because you get a lot of financial advisors, bankers, wealth people, and others who think, well, if we can engage the accountants, we can get them to introduce them to our clients. And if you engage them the right way, and most of them don't do it the right way. So I run this webinar course. I don't advertise it very much, but it's bookmarkly.co.uk/series, SERIES. And I think the next cohort for that is later in May, starts later in May. It's three 1-hour sessions. I've done it twice so far. And of course, the attendees build further collaborations with each other as well. And seeing you shaking your head there, Dale, that's one of the reasons that I do it, is to try and debunk, demystify, and remove some of those misconceptions, because everything I do is for accountants one way or another. The reason I do that is to reduce the number of people who are wasting accountants' time by approaching them in inappropriate ways or ways that just won't work.
Or being bad at sales. My pet peeve with a lot of tech vendors, specifically in this space, is they've got some very bad salespeople. And I'm very easy to sell to, by the way. As someone who's got a sales background, I do the easiest discovery. I tell them the numbers. I tell them the staff. I tell you who the decision makers are. If I can, I'm allowed to. I tell them the problems I'm facing personally. I tell them the problems we're facing as a department and as a practice. And some of them still absolutely fumble, and that vexes me to no end.
No, I address some of that as well. Because I picked up on so many of the mistakes and complaints that I see online, all of which are predictable, invariably.
I think you're right. I think that if I could, what I would say, Dale, is that you're quite rare in that respect, right? And I'm not saying that there's not people out there that don't take that approach, but the approach of being like a considered buyer is underrated, I think. So coming into it, knowing the problem that you're trying to solve, having given consideration to what's going to happen when you say, yes, I want to buy this, but haven't talked to the team about it. Having gone and spoken to 2 or 3 other vendors and been quite clear about the fact that you're going to go and get other opinions and other stuff in the space, because that's important too. And working out how it's going to fit in with other stuff that you've already got, work that you've got on, where you're going to clear the space in order to maintain it. Like, that's all important stuff when you're buying things. I just want to give a bit of a plug actually to he reminded me in the comments, Sam. So I had a chat with RQ yesterday about their referral platform, which is ICAW accredited. That was a really interesting chat because, like you said, Mark, you've got to approach it in the right way, and the referral bit and the declaration of any kickback that you get or any kind of bonus stuff is difficult to manage. So for anyone that is struggling with that, it's just fresh in my brain. from yesterday. So check out RQ. It's a platform to manage that referral process, because I've never seen anything like it before. They've built it in conjunction with the ICAW, and he hasn't asked me to say that. I just thought it was a really interesting conversation. So yeah, worth getting, because it does fix a gap of that. Now I've taken a referral on, talking about a referral, and I don't know how to manage that process because it's not straightforward. So.
Oh, got a good question or statement coming in. Mark Howson again. Thank you, Mark, for joining us. Mark, do you agree that all accountants capable of performing magic? Do you agree that all accountants capable of performing magic as they make company owners' money disappear? Oh, Mark, come on. If that, can I answer that one?
Well, you can. The reason I put my head in my hands is that if I had £1 for every time somebody asked me how good I am at making the money disappear, I'd be a wealthy guy. And the question, my response always is, if I could do magic with money, why do you imagine I'd make it disappear rather than? And everybody asks that variation on the question of making it disappear. No, never make accountants shouldn't be making company owners' money disappear. What they should be doing is helping company owners make more money. And frankly, I love the accountants who stand up at networking events, and I've done a lot of training in helping accountants network more effectively, being able to say something interesting at networking events, because quite often some accountants will go, no, well, there's nothing that makes me any different. We just do accounts and tax returns. Yeah, the accounts and tax returns you do are the same. I agree. But you are special. You are different. You have different style, approach, preferences, background, experience, pricing. Everything about you is special and different. And I love the accountants who will stand up at a networking event and say something to the effect of, hi, I'm an accountant. You're probably used to accountants standing up and saying they help you pay less tax. That's not what I do. I help my clients pay more tax. Some of you look shocked, but think about it. The reason I help my clients pay more tax is I'm more focused on helping my client make more profits. And if they make more profits, they'll pay more tax. Yes, I'll help make sure it's no more than it needs to be, but my focus is on helping you build your business and make more profits. Now, I did that off the top of my head. I've done variations on it many, many times when I've used it as an example. But isn't that going to make you stand out more effectively than saying, I'm just another accountant?
I 100% agree. And the reason why I'm laughing a little bit is because I know Mark is a bit of a wind-up merchant. He does value his accountant very well. He's worked for years in marine engineering, that kind of stuff, and offshore oil. So he understands the value of a good accountant. He's just winding us up a little bit.
Oh, that's okay. And I'm delighted, because I wasn't sure if I knew Mark or not. It does remind me, if anybody's listening to this and they like anything that I've said, do please connect with me on LinkedIn if we're not already connected there. And let me know that you heard me on this podcast, because I don't accept all the connection requests I get.
You don't? Oh, that's controversial, because some people say LinkedIn you should, some people say you shouldn't. Your stance is
no, utter nonsense. LinkedIn, best thought of as an online business networking platform. If somebody asks to connect with you and you think somebody's going to spam you or try and pitch to you, don't accept the connection. Years ago, I used to send a message back. Too much going on these days. I don't do that anymore now. They can still follow you even if you don't accept the connection request. But if they follow you, it means they see your stuff potentially in their fast-flowing river of content. If you're connected, then in theory, you see each other's stuff in that fast-flowing river of content. So you don't have to. I do a lot of training in making effective use of LinkedIn, not just for fun, but for business. And one of the things I say is only connect with the people that you want to connect with, people who are going to be relevant to you in business, maybe as introducers or influencers or as prospective clients or contacts in one way or another. And recognize that other people who are looking to connect with you have the same thoughts in mind, but many of them may be looking to sell to you or pitch to you. So I have, I think of the 15,000 plus followers I have, only about 12,000 connections. I was still a lot, I know, but I wasn't so choosy initially.
Talk to us, Mark, as we talked previously a little bit about LinkedIn, but talk to us about your views on the platform and how people can make the most of it, and also obviously how they can engage with you about the use of LinkedIn, right? Because that's a service that you offer, right?
Oh, indeed. Thank you. Yeah, no, connect with me on LinkedIn. Go to my website. There's a page for LinkedIn masterclasses. I think the date of the next one is on there. The thing is that there are some classic questions everybody asks, such as, when's the best time to post? How do you structure a post? Wrong question. Wrong questions. The starting point is, who are you trying to reach? And then make sure that everything about your profile is written to have a positive impact on the people you most want to influence. You have to start there, because everything you do on LinkedIn leads back to your profile before it goes to your website. And if you don't have a website, bear in mind that if somebody Googles you, if somebody Googles Dale Rodriguez, for example, less so Tony Stevenson, because Tony, like Mark Lee, is one of many. I'm suspecting that Dale Rodriguez is probably one of few, or maybe even unique. So somebody Googles you, they're going to find your LinkedIn profile before they find your website, especially if you're in a small firm and your name isn't even on your website, because you've made the classic mistake of thinking you're promoting your practice brand when actually people recommend you rather than the firm, by and large. So sort your profile out, make good use of all the facilities there. Go back into your history, every part of your experience written to have a positive impact on the people you most want to influence now. So go back, forget the fact it's a bit like it used to be thought of as an online CV. You don't have to write it that way, unless you're looking to get a new job and you want to highlight your experience in previous roles to do that. But you can still write it to have a positive impact on the people you most want to influence now. If that, that could be prospective employers, could be prospective collaborators, prospective clients. And then don't worry about posting content regularly, consistently, all that nonsense. If you're happy doing it, great, doesn't do any harm. But don't imagine for one moment that everybody you're connected to is going to see everything you write. They don't. The underrated facilities on LinkedIn are, one, commenting on posts, relevant posts, and also using the search facilities. And if you're very clear, as a final point, because as you can tell, I could talk about this for ages. I have slides when I do.
We could listen for a long time as well, to be honest.
Yeah, man, yeah.
What I always say, my 5 M's. First M is, what's your motive? What's your objective? What is it you're trying to achieve? Second M is, who's your market? Who is it you want to reach with whatever it is you're doing? Third M is, what's the message you want to get to your market to achieve your motive? The fourth M is, what media could you use to get your message to your market to achieve your motive? Now, most, but not all cases, that media will be LinkedIn, depending upon your answers to the first 3 questions. But most of the accountants I deal with, the answer is going to be LinkedIn. No, I had one guy in his 20s. He'd started his own practice. He was working with influencers on Instagram, and they loved the fact that their accountant was on Instagram. Great. He doesn't need to be on LinkedIn. He can be on Instagram. It makes sense. It's where his target audience is.
Rachel Harris has just passed 100,000 followers on Instagram. I saw a post about that the other day.
Exactly, pink accountant. And then the 5th M is, what methods to use with that media to get your message to your market to achieve your motives. And as I say, the methods on LinkedIn, it's not all about posting stuff and hoping, post and pray, that your target audience will see it, engage, and love what you do, and then become a client. No. LinkedIn's a shortcut to developing business relationships with people. And there are other methods to do that without post and pray. Commenting on relevant people's content and searching them out in the first instance. And a lot of the people that you might search out aren't even active on LinkedIn, but you can use their profile to reach them in real life and approach them as you would in real life. If you're going to a networking event and you can find out who's going to be there beforehand, look them up on LinkedIn, connect with them. That's what I do. I've been connecting with all the exhibitors at Accountex this year because I'm running an online session a couple of days' time for particularly for first-time exhibitors or those who've got new teams to help them get full value from their exhibition stand at Accountex. And again, to reduce the number of people who waste the time of the accountants walking past. And the link for that is bookmarkly.co.uk/Accountex. And that's a 90-minute webinar I'm running this Friday morning.
What I love about everything you just said is it's all sales advice. What I love about what you just said is it's all sales advice.
Of course it is.
It's literally just, make sure you target people correctly. One of the things I think the trick people are missing with LinkedIn is like you said, you can find someone who's not active on LinkedIn, but it will link to other things. If you want to approach that person, go look at their blog. If you want to reach a director, go look at their website. And then when you meet them at a networking event, oh, I saw that your company posted about this thing you're doing. It's a really great project. And you can do your research. And it's not a cold lead anymore. It's a lukewarm introduction. You've done your research and they will appreciate that you've searched their business. And it's so easy to do, but so many people don't do it.
It's astonishing how low the bar is for that as well. I was having a conversation with somebody at DAS, and I had spent like a little bit of time just like it was a business that I'd been ambiently aware of for a while. And the guy reached out to me on a recommendation, and we had a chat. So I'd done a bit more digging recently, and I can't actually remember what it was. There was something that popped up. And I referenced it in the conversation, and he went, "How did you know that?" And I was like, "Well, just did a bit of research." You just see the surprise in his face of like, "Wow, no one ever reads beyond like name of person and the first two lines of the bio," kind of thing. So yeah.
Samuel Green in the comments.
Sorry, from somebody who started an audit practice, and it was an email, and I read the first 3 lines and thought, "Oh, this is just spam nonsense." I read a bit further, and it was clearly tailored to me. And actually, the more I read, the more I realized it wasn't even a standard message. It was unique to me, which was very flattering. But it was an email rather than a LinkedIn message because he wanted to ask a lot. And I was flattered he'd taken the time to do that. And then I connected with him on LinkedIn. Whether he'd found me on LinkedIn in the first place or not, I don't know, but his message stood out in a positive way. He'd made an effort before he approached me, and he wanted my guidance and support to potentially collaborate, a load of sort of normal stuff that I'm used to, but it stood out in a positive way. As you say, Dale, it isn't actually that difficult.
2 things very quickly, maybe 3. I'm going to read out Samuel Green's comment, and then we're coming to the hour. Again, we could talk for ages. I enjoy it.
Yeah, we'll go have Mark back on, I think. We'll go have Mark back on if he's willing.
Once I've read the comment, Mark, if you could maybe, or Tony, I'll give you a chance to ask one more question, and then we'll get Mark to drop one more pearl of wisdom, and then we'll end it. So, reading Samuel Green's comment, I attended DAS, Digital Accounting Show, as a visitor rather than a vendor this year. It gave me a completely different view on how accountants are approached at events, ! Tony, over to you. Any final questions or anything you want to ask Mark?
I'd just rather listen to Mark drop his pearl of wisdom for the last minute. If I'm honest, I've asked all the questions that I feel I could get into now with that time left. And yeah, as I said, there's an open invite to come back on, Mark, if you'd like to in the future.
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you. It's been great chatting to you. I feel very, very flattered. I don't know if it's a pearl of wisdom or not. And it's something I used to say at the end of all of my talks, which is, and I haven't said it for a long time, so we'll see if I can remember it. Never put off till tomorrow something that you could do today. Because if you do it today and you enjoy it, you can do it again tomorrow.